All right, let me just do the intro here.
Yeah.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Mike Quartararo, and please make welcome to my friend and co-host.
Hey, guys, Jeff Hirvela.
Fantastic. This is Mind Matters, Breaking Silence in Legal Spaces, brought to you by Senzon, and our sponsor today, Wyndcrofte Coffee. Visit wyndcrofte.com. Vulnerable conversations often start over a cup of coffee. This is a space, my friends, where we share some real stories and we talk openly about physical and mental well-being, addiction, recovery, grief, and of course, resources for dealing with all of the above. Jeff, how are we doing?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Good to be here, man. I can give a quick update, hopefully quick, covering all of those. First, I'm doing great. I'm really glad to be here. I missed you. We took a few months. We were busy. Life got lifey. Your hair got longer. I respect rocking the ponytail. I want to see a top knot next time we're on the show, but we'll get there. So I'm glad to be back. Like, I really enjoy doing this, and prioritizing it. So brings me to my topic. So between the last time we met, a lot has happened. One big thing that happened for me, I ran in and completed the Cocodona 250 race. It's an ultra marathon in Arizona. It starts in Black Canyon City, goes up to Prescott, goes through Sedona, and finishes in Flagstaff. It's 250 miles. You have 125 hours to do it. It's about 40,000 feet of elevation gain. It is a monster of a race. I do a lot of ultras. It's a big part of my story right now. It was not part of my story back in my using days. And on this race in particular, I met challenges that I had to dig really deep with. 23 miles in, I actually had a nasty fall and split my knee open and had to hobble for the next 50 miles until I got to Prescott, where I went to an urgent care and had it sewed up, and then continued on the rest of the race, and did complete the race, not how I expected, but dealing with these challenges and having to dig deep to push through a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And I've talked about my running in the past on this show, and I talk about running for causes. I run for awareness around recovery. I run for Elevate the USA, a youth development program. I run for my kids. I run for my partner. I run for my friends. On the last day of the race, I'm up in the mountains and I'm sleep deprived. So, starting to get a little bit, hallucinating and just seeing things and hearing things. But I was contemplating and meditating on why I'm doing this race. And it hit me. It struck me for the first time where I said, I'm doing this race for myself. And it was a cathartic moment because I felt when I first said it, I'm like, that's selfish. Why would I run for myself? I'm doing this for other people. Like, that's not a good reason to run for myself. But then I remembered doing this for myself is like why we're here right now, Mike. Doing this because I want to dedicate time and dedicate effort to this program. It's why I'm sober. I'm dedicating time and effort into my sobriety. And through these things, my hope is that it benefits others. It's of service to others. So doing this race, I did it for myself, to be the person, to show up as a person for myself. But that person shows up in the life of others, my partner, my kids, my work, And so I want to throw that out there. A lot of times we talk about like, oh, I'm doing these great things for someone else and like how good that is. It's okay to say, I'm doing this for myself and I'm prioritizing me and my wellness so I can show up the best I can for others. So a loaded answer there, but wanted to share that. And it kind of does relate to our guest today. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fantastic. And kudos to you for finishing the race. It's really a demonstration of the resilience and strength that we could find inside ourselves. And it reminds me of something that my mom used to say to me when I was growing up and going from girlfriend to girlfriend. And it's a really simple message, and I decided while you were speaking that I'm going to share it today, and that is, before you can love someone else, you have to love yourself. And that's just, to me, just emotional math, right? You have to understand it, and you have to experience all of the hardships and um, obstacles and things in order to appreciate, the smooth rides, right? Because if you don't have that sort of juxtaposition, it's impossible to navigate life. And so,
Yes.
we talk here a lot about hardship and grief and addiction and problems and obstacles. And I want everybody to understand that in order to get through this journey we call life, you've got to have a mix of both in order to really experience life at its fullest. So that's my message. I'm doing great. I'm glad you made it through the race. I hope your knee is okay. Anything else before we bring our guest in today?
No, I have some news to share at the end, but I did want to focus on that kind of theme and that message. I love that emotional math you talk about, like, and prioritizing self for others. So I think I'll use that to kind of transition into the intro here. So we've got a special guest today. So Jason is a longtime friend of mine in recovery. He's going to share his story, and we have him on as a special guest in that he started a coffee company, as you mentioned at the front, called Wyndcrofte. I'll let him talk about the message, but they're going to be a sponsor of ours going forward, and a great collaboration with a great message. So I've known Jason for a long time. It's an honor to have him on, and here he is. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it, and super grateful to be here. First off, Jeff, congratulations on completing the Coca Donut 250. You're out of your mind. That's crazy. And Mike, congratulations on your hair. Unfortunately, I don't have that flow, but as you guys could see, I'm working on it. So hopefully I'll achieve that soon.
Life goals. Yeah. Well, Jason, thanks for being here.
It's easier. I'm telling you, it's not a thing. I didn't wake up this morning and say, hey, I'm going to look cool in a ponytail. It's a mess if I don't do this. It's just a mess.
Well, thanks for joining us. And part of the first section here, we'd like to just kind of hear about your story, Jason, how you got to Wyndcrofte, maybe a little background on just, your, recovery, whatever you want to share, professional, kind of how that played into your professional career, given that with the audience being through LinkedIn here, especially, and then talk about this new venture of Wyndcrofte. So go ahead, man.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, again, appreciate, being here. Jeff, this means a lot to me. Obviously, our relationship is the foundation. Our relationship is built upon recovery, and we've been through a 9+ year journey together, which is just remarkable. And it just shows with even yourself, when you think about wellness and exercise and focus and discipline, being able to achieve a 250-mile race. I remember I couldn't even run 1 mile when I was in the heart of my using, and everything was out of whack. So, yeah, I'll keep my story pretty short and sweet. I am, how could I phrase this? So, yes, I'm in recovery. I've been sober for 9 years. Exercise is also a huge part of my journey. I happen to be also running the New York City Marathon in the fall. And I will be representing a foundation called the Release Foundation. And they are a major partner of Wyndcrofte. And what Release Foundation does is they raise money and they send people to treatment for substance abuse and mental health that cannot afford it. And throughout this journey and throughout the creation of Wyndcrofte, the company, I realized how many people struggle out there, that are just afraid to be vulnerable and actually talk about the way that they feel. And that's something my wife and I really instill upon my 2 children, who are 13 and 10 at a young age, which I did not know. Being able to be vulnerable, being able to share the way that you feel, being able to talk about how vulnerability is actually courageous. It's not weak. And as a child, I would be, I was afraid to do those things. And so I'm partnering with Release. I'm excited to raise money for them and run. But I grew up as a child who was very high energy, always a high performer, good athlete, had a lot of friends, but always felt like I was insecure and anxious and never talked about the way that I felt. So even though on the outside, maybe things looked like I was polished, I was doing well, my relationships were strong. There was always something slightly off that I couldn't articulate. And at the core of it is something I learned over time, is that I suffer from anxiety and depression. And a lot of what drove me into my using was life got bigger, got married, had children, took on more responsibilities, was working, wanted to be high performing. And because I never learned the skills to actually address mental health, I was always somebody who liked to drink, and I would say I would casually drug, but would not consider myself an addict by any means. But at the age of 31, I was going through a lot of anxiety and depression, and my life was getting big, and I was doing very well at work. So I thought that everything was dandy. And I decided to start, taking, opiates. Somebody introduced me to them, and long story short, once I started, I couldn't stop. And that was the first time I had a situation in my life where a substance completely hijacked my brain. So it took over everything. It turned into a multi-year addiction, coupled with alcohol and other substances. And again, on the outside, marriage looked good. Maybe on social media, and maybe when people saw my wife and I, our relationship looked good, but behind closed doors, I was an isolator. I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't present. I was a shell of myself in front of my children. Yes, I would show up at events for them, and I would do what I could. But my priorities were really numbing out my feelings, and not being able to talk about the way that I felt. And I only knew one way to do that. And that drove me to a place of, a few years later, I ended up at Caron Treatment Centers up in Wernersville, Pennsylvania, which is a renowned treatment center. And I remember sitting there in a wooden twin bed by myself, and saying, how did I get here? I have 1 and 4-year-old children at home and a wife that's loving and supportive. What have I done to myself, and what have I done to them? And I've scared, the life out of everybody in my family. And unfortunately, addiction got the best of me. And I was very fortunate that I had that miracle, and I decided to ask for help on my own. I was not forced to treatment through an intervention. As we know, there's a high, relapse rate with people that are forced in. Recovery, from my experience, and from the 12-step programs that I participate in, it's very clear that you have to want it yourself and come to on your own. And I was lucky to have that white light moment. So I was super lucky. I met my wife in college. So we had a 10-year relationship before my using really kicked in and I lost control. She was super supportive, which I'm very grateful for to this day. I made a commitment to get sober. I went away to treatment. I came out, I started really committing to my recovery and connecting with people in the recovery community, and exercise, wellness, and mental health just became a huge part of my journey. And that's why Mind Matters really resonated with me. It's not just about the sobriety, it's about vulnerability and mental health. And it all kind of ties together nicely. When Jeff and I were speaking, we said this is a perfect opportunity for us to share that message together. And I'm in a different business that I've been doing for 20 years. But, a couple of years into my recovery, I said, you know what, I want to continue doing what I'm doing, but how could I make, I do help people in recovery, and I sponsored, men, and I a big part of my life has become helping other people get sober and passing the message, and being of service to my wife and my children. And I completely did a 180. I turned into a non-present father and husband to somebody that is ultra present, and rebuilt my relationships, my marriage, my friendships. I'm there for people. I care. I'm of service. And I thought about it. I wanted to get into some sort of a business or an opportunity where I can make more of an impact in both the mental health and the substance abuse community. And, fortunately, I now had the time where I met another gentleman in recovery named Chattel, and him and I decided we were going to start a company. And we started a coffee company called Wyndcrofte. And it's a mission-driven coffee company, and we're super excited about this. We have legitimate partnerships. Like I said, we're partnering with the Release Foundation. We're already donating monthly to them, and made a commitment that we will continue to do so regardless of revenue. We're talking to other foundations as well. So a percentage of our proceeds that we haven't figured out exactly, depends on our revenue, is going to be going to charities. And we're also looking to connect with mental health charities as well. So there's been a lot of buzz. Our goal is more of a B2B. So we're looking at, selling to large enterprises like law firms. We're about to close with a big major law firm, financial services firms, insurance companies, really any enterprise that serves coffee to their employees. And then we've also launched at Wyndcrofte.com an e-commerce business where people could read more about our mission and our story. And that's more for individual coffee consumption for people that want to, brew coffee at home, whether it's whole bean or grind espresso coffee, whatever that is. So now I've been fortunate that I'm able to, shift focus to running my regular, company that I do, but also now spending a tremendous amount of time on Wyndcrofte and getting organizations and people behind our mission. And that's kind of where I am today. And I'm excited that I'm able to be a partner for Mind Matters, ACEDS, Jeff and Mike. And I think, Wyndcrofte, our mission could go a long way. I'm hoping people get behind it. And, I'm looking to partner with people like Mike and Jeff and saying, how could I help them? Right. How could I help them with the things that matter to them in mental health and recovery and wellness and trauma? And here we are today. And so that's kind of a high level what my story is. I'm happy to share more, but I hope that was helpful.
That was great, man. That was great. Yeah. I was gonna say the mission, and I love the tagline, one cup at a time. Vulnerable conversations happen one cup at a time. My tagline for my running is one step at a time. We borrow heavily from program in that. Given that coffee is such a saturated market, there's, a million coffee brands out there. I would imagine the mission has been the focus in the marketing. And I'm just curious, there is a stigma around addiction and recovery. And sometimes it's in my head, others aren't going to want to hear about it. So I'm just curious, the reception you got from people when you talk to them about the mission, hey, we're a coffee company, but this is our mission. And it's focused around wellness and addiction and recovery. How's the reception been from others?
That's a great question. And I could the word substance abuse or addiction scares a lot of people as well. So for people who aren't necessarily affected themselves, or they don't have family members or friends, and it's really, these are topics that scare them and that they're not comfortable with. So that was something we really thought about. So my partner and I decided that, we're not going to change who we are. We met in sobriety. We're sobriety brothers, and that's the core of who we are. And we wanted to make a difference in the recovery community. However, both of us are also super involved and working on ourselves on a daily basis. And mental health is a huge, huge part of it, and wellness overall. So we thought about, while recovery and sobriety is something we want to focus on, we want to dually focus on mental health and the wellness umbrella in general, because we thought that would impact many, many people who couldn't connect to the recovery world. So this two-pronged approach, which touches a lot of different areas. So we're very honest. And some people, we were a little bit insecure at first. Oh, people are going to judge us because we're recovering addicts. They say, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Then they're not the right people to come along with the mission. So far it's been received extremely well, which we're super grateful for. And we're also open to expanding to other types of charities. So for example, we had a meeting with a client recently, and they have somebody in their family that's affected by something that we don't typically cover, but they're interested in donating to that. So we may explore, some other charities outside of that. Still falls under the health umbrella. But at the end of the day, to go back to your question, we're sticking to our core of who we are, and our focus is absolutely a big part of it is recovery and addiction, but also we're really focused on mental health and wellness in general. So we feel like that should encompass a larger population of people.
That's beautiful, man. Kind of on the theme of, making time for these things. You're juggling a lot. You mentioned family. You ran a half marathon recently, so you're getting in your runs as well. Jason's a fast runner. I can just suffer for a long time. We both have our quirks with running. You have your regular job, and now you have this. I'm just curious, back to kind of my original comments of I'm making time because this is important. This is clearly important to you. How do you find the time? How do you make the time? Because a lot of times, making time is the barrier to entry. How did you kind of decide this is worth it? I'm going to put my effort into this. Was it a moment where you're just this just makes sense? Or was it a long time coming together and figuring it out?
Great question as well. To be honest with you, in this kind of it's a very cool thing about, participating in and being a member of, 12-step programs. I'm very openly a big part of AA. And I've met a lot of individuals in there that are, thrive from, people who are on the streets to some of the most successful CEOs in Fortune, 1000s. And the cool thing about it is there's a very special connection between people in recovery. And I met my partner in the rooms, and we just started talking one day, and we both in some way always wanted to make some sort of additional impact outside of the program. And there wasn't much thought. We kind of just started talking. We had a very natural connection. And next thing we knew, we were working on a company. So then I had to take a step back, discuss with my wife, how am I going to split my time? How am I going to manage being an awesome father, husband, son, brother, and running two companies at the same time? So time management has definitely been a challenge. But I've worked very hard to figure out how to allocate time to specific things. Now, the cool thing is my partner is this is his sole primary company at the moment. I'm working, I would say, almost full time, but we have a great rapport and a great understanding of one another. And he's excellent at covering a lot of the stuff that I can't do while I'm working on stuff with my family and my other business. So we just launched this company a few months ago. We've only been talking about it for about a year. So it's been a juggling act, but it's a work in progress, as is my mental health and my sobriety. So every day, kind of take a look at what are the important things. First and foremost, how could I help somebody in this world? Because that's really at the core of what's kept me sober and given us inner peace. But it's always going to be a juggling act, right? So far it's been good, and time management is always tricky, but it's just taking it one day at a time. One cup at a time, and trying to figure out how to prioritize without losing sight of what's important.
That's beautiful, man.
Hey,
Mike, go ahead.
Jason, first of all, congratulations on nearly a decade of sobriety, I guess, and the company and all those things. It's fantastic. But I'm wondering if was there something that sort of set it off for you? I know you were sitting on that wooden twin bed and you were thinking, how did I get here? But there had to be something more than that, some switch that went off that said, hey, I need to make a change here. And how did you get to that? And what was the resource you tapped into that people listening today could take away and hopefully motivate them to make a change in their life?
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, I'm blessed that I don't know how it happened, but I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired and lying and running around and manipulating, and the highs and the lows and the using and the chasing. September 7th, which 2017, which was the last day that I consumed any form of a substance, I actually woke my wife up at 1:30 in the morning. I thought I was having a panic attack. And she thought I was actually sober for 6 months, but I had been lying about that, and going to outpatient and lying about that as well. 1:30 in the morning, I woke up, and this is a true story. I woke my wife up. We turned the lights on. I looked at her in the face and I said, I need help, and I need to go to treatment tomorrow. And I need to go away and to separate. I just got so sick and tired of everything. And I got so scared. And the blessing and the white light moment for me was, throughout all the using, you lose track of priorities, or you don't think about what happens if, God forbid, I get sick or die. How is that going to affect my children and my wife? Never thought about that stuff. How I'm going to lose my job. All of a sudden, I came to, and everything's like, holy shit. Like, if something happens to me, I'm going to ruin the lives of everybody around me. And how selfish is this behavior? And I got scared for the first time, and my heart started racing. And right then and there, I was positive I was done. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but that's exactly what happened. And my wife and I had a multiple-hour conversation. We researched treatment centers, and she was able to get me admitted. And then I spoke to my family members and my friends and told them that I was not the type of user that was going out and partying in clubs or with other women. I was always very, very loyal. I was a user that isolated, which is a very dark type of using, suppressing feelings. So I wasn't running around. The double life I was living was sitting in rooms alone and just being in places alone and just, it's just stuffing down, pushing down the anxiety and depression and the things I couldn't cope with that ultimately led to me using. Now, whether I was born with, there's genetics, some people say it's a disease that could be inherited or whatever that is. For some reason, once I started, I couldn't stop. And that's the only way I knew how to deal with my anxiety and depression and running away. And it just, I got out of control. But on September 7th, 2017, the last day I used, I woke up in the middle of the night, woke my wife up, and I knew it was over right then and there. I was in treatment probably 3 days later.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Jeff, what else we got? We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm picking up on some kind of an order of operation in here and some key themes that I think are really helpful for people to hear. It's like, okay, all this stuff happens, but like really what's the plan of action here? Or what happens in these situations? And it kind of comes back to what the point I was leading with was you have to want this for yourself. So that point, the gift of desperation, wanting to change, it's and you said it earlier, like people that are forced to go to recovery centers have a higher, rate of relapsing than those that voluntarily want to make a change. It has to come from within. And that's like step one is just like, I need to make a change. But then asking for help, the next step, you ask your wife for help. You've got a business partner that's helping you. You've got, your fellowship in your community and sobriety that helps you. Like, it's amazing. Like, asking for help. I feel like I am a failure if I have to ask for help because I should know the answer. I asked Mike for help. I asked Maribel for help for starting this show because I couldn't figure it out on my own. And I'm glad I did. Like, this is how things get done. And then being intentional with like how you like devote your time and time management and like prioritizing things that are important. And it's not selfish. You're helping others because the final thing is being of service is the North Star in all of this. And it's being a service to your family, being a service to your community, your work, being a service to yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna prioritize Jeff. You're gonna prioritize Jason. Like I'm gonna be of service to myself so I can show up as the best person for others and do these amazing things. And you're doing amazing things, man.
Thank you. There's just two things I wanted to add, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Something I'm very passionate about, and this ties back to Mind Matters and mental health. Putting recovery aside. Both my wife and I feel it's super important. We have 13 and 10-year-old sons, as I mentioned, and mental health is a big thing now. It's a lot more prevalent, and we're really trying to teach them to talk about the way that they feel and to be honest and not to be afraid. And that's learning that at a young age. I feel is super important. So I'm a big believer in that. That kids, they need to learn and they need to know that that's actually courageous. Even though I still today feel insecure about asking for help, I do know deep down in my heart that asking for help is actually courageous, even though it may feel weak. And that's just the plug I wanted to give to that. And then just real quick, kind of shifting back to the business. This is also a business function. To anybody listening or any corporations, a big part of why we chose to go enterprise as our focus. We do have e-commerce, like I said, but enterprise is our focus. Is we felt we'd be able to spread the word and make the most impact by being able to infiltrate companies and partner with them, not only as a client, but hopefully, wellness is a big part of their journeys, and they're doing wellness initiatives there. And not only are they excited to get behind our mission, but they're also excited to internally communicate that. Right. So if that goes into a company like a law firm, say there's 1,200 people in the office, and they're interested in wellness initiatives, they say, oh, we're super. They send out an email. We're super. Come try the coffee on the 12th floor. We're partnered with a mission-driven coffee brand. And if you want to learn a little bit about how they're making an impact, you could do that. And then all those employees are exposed to it. They go to our website, they see, and then they may know somebody who needs help, and they may come to me and say, oh, Jason, I saw you're in the recovery community. My cousin or my son is struggling. Would you talk to him? Right. So we wanted to reach them, as many people as we can. And so we figured that would be a good way. And we're honestly just looking for corporations who want to get behind the mission because they have a lot of power and impact. There's a lot of employees and they have big names. So I think if anybody's listening, anybody's interested, that is a big part of what we're doing.
It's beautiful, man.
We're almost out of time, but I just want to reiterate, what I kind of opened the show with, this notion of Jeff, you said it, prioritizing yourself, but self-love, loving yourself first before you can love anyone else. And I'm going to speculate here and say that, if you don't find a way to do that, and maybe this is what happened to you guys, and maybe you're not even aware of it. If you don't find a way to love yourself, the result is that whatever you're doing that's bad for you mentally, physically, in terms of substances you're putting in your body, your body will start to shut down. And so it's telling you to make a change. And so, like, for a lot of people, some traumatic event is, rock bottom for them, and then they start looking up from there. For some people, and I guess to some extent both of you may have experienced this, you just a light switched on and you said, okay, I need to start prioritizing myself over everything else, because if I'm going to be any good to anybody else, I need to have my house in order. So thanks for sharing your story. We're almost out of time here, Jeff. Closing thoughts.
Man, I think we said a lot. I love where these conversations go, and the common theme we keep coming back to is that, self-care is important. It's okay. There's the expression, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help the child on a plane, right? That's like the whole, therapy 101. But putting it into practice and seeing people that are doing it. And Jason, you're a huge example of this in everything in you're doing. Couldn't be happier to partner with you in Wyndcrofte. We're going to be using you guys as collaborating with you guys going forward. So we'll be keeping updates going about Wyndcrofte. So thank you for your interest in Mind Matters.
And thank you guys so much for having me. This was a great opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, any last thoughts?
Not just a great conversation, and want to remind everybody, as we say at the close of every episode, you are not alone. Let's keep showing up for each other.
And thanks for joining us on this journey, one step at a time.
Take
Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.